Here we go again. Of course I'm always drinking like coffee or tea or apple cider or something when doing these videos, because you gotta keep your throat lubricated. So since it's October, Halloween, spooky time, I figure if people like hearing me read things or whatever, then why not read some more spooky stuff? Last time I read Edgar Allan Poe, and that seemed to go over pretty well. And I also read some fan fiction, which, to be fair, it was actually pretty good. I know I said I'd read like Sal and Travis fan fiction, and I was going in expecting to find fluffy, smutty debauchery or something. And I actually pretty enjoyed what I found. And it inspired me to read some of what I'm going to read for you today. I've been practicing on pronouncing things correctly and taking my time reading things, so hopefully I don't screw up too much, and if I do, we will keep a counter once more of how many times I can't say a word. So if you like videos like this, put on some headphones or some earbuds or something to get the full experience. Get you something to drink some coffee with me, maybe get a snack, whatever. Lay down in bed and just listen to my voice. You don't even have to watch, because who wants to see this? My mom does. My mom wants to see this. Where's my coffee? Hope you guys enjoy. I'm going to be reading a little bit from Dracula by Bram Stoker, of The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. And if you have any suggestions on what you'd like me to read next, let me know, I guess. I did mention before that I can give you guys my email if you just want to send me things. And if there's enough of you, and you want me to make a Discord, let me know. Otherwise, I feel like it'll just be me sitting there quietly talking to myself. Or who knows? Yeah. Alright, so I don't have a physical copy of Dracula anymore, but you can find it free online in PDF version, or other websites have uploaded it. So that's what I have right now. I'm gonna read off my phone, so set the mood. Here we go. Jonathan Harker's journal. 3rd of May, Bistritz. Left Munich at 8:35 p.m. on 1st May, arriving in Vienna early next morning. Should have arrived at 6:46, but train was an hour late. Budapest seems a wonderful place, from the glimpse which I got of it from the train, and the little I could walk through the streets. I feared to go very far from the station, as we had arrived late and would start as near the correct time as possible. The impression I had was that we were leaving the west and entering the east. I mean, that makes sense. The most western of splendid bridges over the Danube, which is here of noble width and depth, took us among the traditions of Turkish rule. We left in pretty good time and came after nightfall to Klausenburg. Here I stopped for the night at the Hotel Royal. I had dinner, or rather supper, a chicken done up some way with red pepper, which was very good but thirsty. Mem, get recipe for Mina. That's sweet. I asked the waiter, and he said it was called paprika Hendel, and that, as it was a national dish, I should be able to get it anywhere along the Carpathians. I found my smattering of German very useful here indeed. I don't know how I should be able to get on without it. Having had some time at my disposal when in London, I had visited the British Museum and made search among the books and maps in the library regarding Transylvania. It had struck me that some foreknowledge of the country could hardly fail to have some importance in dealing with the noblemen of the country. I find that the district he named is in the extreme east of the country, just on the borders of 3 states, Transylvania, Moldavia, and Bukovina, in the midst of the Carpathian Mountains, one of the wildest and least known portions of Europe. I was not able to light on any map or work giving the exact locality of the castle Dracula, as there are no maps of this country as yet to compare with our own Ordnance Survey maps. But I found that Bistritz, the post town named by Count Dracula, is a fairly well-known place. I shall enter here some of my notes, as they may refresh my memory when I talk over my travels with Mina. In the population of Transylvania, there are 4 distinct nationalities: Saxons in the south, and mixed with them the Wallachs, who are the descendants of the Dacians, Magyars in the west, and Sekeles in the east and north. Wow, sign me up to make an audiobook, right? I am going among the latter, who claim to be descended from Attila and the Huns. This may be so, for when the Magyars conquered the country in the 11th century, they found the Huns settled in it. I can't even say words like settled anymore, apparently. I read that every known superstition in the world is gathered into the horseshoe of the Carpathians, as if it were the center of some sort of imaginative whirlpool. If so, my stay may be very interesting. Mem, I must ask the Count all about them. That's chapter 1 of Dracula. I'm not going to read anymore because I'm not good at that. Who doesn't know what Dracula is, right? If you haven't read it, though, Dracula is mostly a collection of journals and entries written by Dracula's victims. So I think I read like most of the book, and that's Jonathan. And it's just like letter. So it's not like a usual story where like you read, oh, this is happening first perspective, third perspective, whatever. It's technically first perspective, I guess, but it's like letters. And I think at one point in the book, it transitions from letters to like a normal book. Which, this might be interesting, because we are talking about Halloween time and spooky books and stuff. Dracula, he is like loosely based on Vlad the Impaler, I believe. I might have to do some more research and then correct myself down below or on screen. But Dracula is not only based on Vlad the Impaler, he's also based on Marcy Brown. I think it's Marcy Brown. And she is known as the first North American vampire, which, if you haven't heard of Lore, it's a great podcast, and I think episode 1 is on Marcy Brown. So give it a listen. If you're into that kind of thing, you should be able to find it on Spotify or Podcast Addict or anywhere you listen to podcasts, really. It's free, so what's stopping you? I don't know. This one I have the book for, with a strange case of Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. So, wow. Technically it is a short story, but I'm not going to read the whole thing. But yo, let me know if that's something that you guys want. Where like, if you want me to make a ridiculous audiobook of like a short story or something. I can do it on The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka if you want. That'd be fun. And I can just read the whole thing. Y'all can be laying there in bed, put your headphones on, put your earbuds in, and just listen to me read and fail at pronouncing things correctly. If you want that, I got time. And plenty of coffee. Alright, so let's read chapter 1. So this starts out, it doesn't specifically say chapter 1. I think the chapters just have individual names. So this one is called Story of the Door. Cue atmosphere. Mr. Utterson, the lawyer, was a man of a rugged countenance that was never lighted by a smile. Cold, scanty, and embarrassed in discourse, backward in sentiment, lean, long, dusty, dreary, and yet somehow lovable. Yo, we out here roasting this dude right out the gate. Damn, Mr. Utterson. No one likes you, but you're lovable, apparently, so... At friendly meetings, and when the wine was to his taste, something eminently human beckoned from his eye. Something indeed which never found its way into his conversation, but which spoke not only in these silent symbols of the after-dinner face, but more often and loudly in the acts of his life. I don't know this word. He was austere with himself? Dictionary! He was austere with himself. A-U-S-T-E-R-E. Let's learn a word today. This is going to be Larry's word of the day. We've learned together. Drank gin, ew, when he was alone, to mortify taste for vintages, and though he enjoyed the theater, had not crossed the doors of one for 20 years. Well, then you don't like it, then do you? But he had an approved tolerance for others, sometimes wandering, almost with envy at the high pressure of spirits involved in their misdeeds, and in any extremity inclined to help rather than reprove. I incline to Cain's heresy, he used to say quaintly. Haha, get it, Abel and Cain? Haha. I let my brother go to the devil in his own way. Oh, so you're a dick! Oh, there's even like an asterisk in here after that goes to the bottom, and it says, reference to the Bible, Genesis 4:9, and Cain's famous question, am I my brother's keeper? I got it before the asterisk. See, I know things. In this character, it was frequently his fortune to be the last reputable acquaintance and the last good influence of the lives of downgoing men. And to such as these, as long as they came about his chambers, he never marked a shade of change in his demeanor. No doubt the feat was easy to Mr. Utterson, for he was undemonstrative at the best, and even his friendship seemed to be founded in a similar catholicity, I don't know, the word Catholic's in it, of good nature. Are we still roasting this dude? It was the mark of a modest man to accept his friendly circle ready-made from the hands of opportunity, and that was the lawyer's way. His friends were those of his own blood or whom he had known for longest. His affections, like ivy, were the growth of time. They implied no aptness in the object. Hence, no doubt, the bond that united him to Mr. Richard Enfield, his distant kinsman, the well-known man about town. Sounds pretty gay. It was a nut to crack for many. What those two could see in each other, or what subject they could find in common. Oh, okay. Hey, it's okay if you got friends you got nothing in common with. As long as you get along, that's all that matters. It was reported by those who encountered them in their Sunday walks that they said nothing, looked singularly dull, and would hail with obvious relief the appearance of a friend. For all that, the two men put the greatest store by these excursions, counted them the chief jewel of each week, and not only set aside occasions of pleasure, but even resisted the calls of business that they might enjoy them uninterrupted. Oh, that's nice. Maybe they just like to chill with each other and not saying anything. They just like the company of each other. And maybe that's why they get along, because they both understand that it's okay to be friends with somebody and just enjoy their company and not have to talk. They are woke. Stop roasting them! Or roast them, I don't know. It chanced on one of these ramblings that their way led them down a by-street in a busy quarter of London. The street was small and is what is called quiet, but there drove a thriving trade on the weekdays. The inhabitants were all doing well, it seemed, and all emulously, hoping to do better still, and laying out the surplus of their grains in coquetry. C-O-Q-U-E-T-R-Y. I don't blame myself for not knowing some of these words, because these are words we don't use on a daily basis nowadays. They're more of olden time. And if you don't hear a word said once a month or something, or even read it often, in modern books, then how could you be expected to know it? You don't. That's why you get a dictionary and you learn a word. Coquetry. So that the shop front stood along the thoroughfare with an air of invitation, like rows of smiling saleswomen. Even on Sunday, when it veiled its more florid charms and the lay comparatively empty of passage, the street shone out in contrast to its dingy neighborhood, like a fire in the forest, and with its freshly painted shutters, well-polished brasses, and general cleanliness, and gaiety of note. I did say it was gay. Instantly caught and pleased the eye of the passenger. 2 doors from one corner on the left hand going east, the line was broken by the entry of a court, and just at that point, a certain sinister block of building thrust forward. Its gable on the street. It was 2 stories high, showed no window, nothing but a door on the lower story, and a blind forehead of discolored wall on the upper, and bore in every feature the marks of prolonged and sordid negligence. Ah, so it's ugly. The door, which was equipped with neither bell nor knocker, was blistered and disdained. Tramps slouched into the recess and struck matches on the panels. Children kept shop upon the steps. Stoop boy's afraid to leave a stoop. The schoolboy had tried his knife on the moldings, and for close on the generation, no one had appeared to drive away these random visitors or to repair their ravages. So this is a building no one gives a fuck about. Mr. Enfield and the lawyer were on the other side of the by-street, but when they came abreast of the entry, the former lifted up his cane and pointed. "Did you ever remark that door?" he asked, and when his companion replied in the affirmative, "It is connected, in my mind," added he, "with a very odd story." "Indeed," said Mr. Utterson, with a slight change of voice. "And what was that?" "Well, it was this way," returned Mr. Enfield. "I was coming home from some place at the end of the world, about 3 o'clock of a black winter morning, and my way lay through a part of town where there was literally nothing to be seen but lamps. Street after street, and all the folks asleep. Street after street, all lined up as if for a procession, and all as empty as a church. Oh? Till at last I got into that state of mind when a man listens, and begins to long for the sight of a policeman." Who does? "All at once, I saw 2 figures. One a little man who was stumping along eastward at a good walk, and the other, a girl, maybe 8 or 10, was running so hard as she was able down a cross street. Well, sir, the 2 ran into one another, naturally enough at the corner, and then came the horrible part of the thing. For the man trampled calmly over the child's body, and left her screaming on the ground. It sounds nothing to hear, but it was hellish to see. It wasn't like a man, it was like some damned juggernaut. I gave a view halloa, took to my heels, collared my gentleman, and brought him back to where he was there already quite a group about the screaming child. He was perfectly cool and made no resistance, but gave me one look so ugly that it brought out a sweat on me like running. The people who had turned out were the girl's own family, and pretty soon, the doctor for whom she had been sent put in his appearance. Well, the child was not much worse, more frightened, according to the sawbones. What are the sawbones? Where's this at? So sawbones is slang for a surgeon or a physician. That's cool! I like that. That's like how in A Clockwork Orange, he makes up that word horror show, which has its own definition, like Dr. Seuss did. Maybe sawbones was an actual word back in that day, though. Words are all made up. Horror show's a word. It's all made up. And there you might have supposed would be an end to it. But there was one curious circumstance. I had taken a loathing to my gentleman at first sight. So had the child's family, which was only natural. But the doctor's case was what struck me. He was the usual cut and dry apothecary of no particular age and color, with a strong Edinburgh accent, and about as emotional as a bagpipe. Ooh, we roastin'. Well, sir, he was like the rest of us. Every time he looked at my prisoner, I saw that Sawbones turn sick and white with desire to kill him. I knew what was in his mind, just as he knew what was in mine. And killing being out of the question, we did the next best. We told the man we could, and would, make such a scandal out of this, as should make his name stink from one end of London to the other. If he had any friends or any credit, we undertook that he should lose them. And all in the time as we were pitching in his red hot, we were keeping the women off of him as best as we could, for they were as wild as harpies. I never saw a circle of such hateful faces, and there was the man in the middle with a kind of black sneering coolness. Frightened too, I could see that, but carrying it off, sir, really like Satan. If you choose to make capital out of this accident, said he, I am naturally helpless. No gentleman but wishes to avoid a scene, says he. Name your figure. Well, we screwed him up to £100 for the child's family. He would have clearly liked to stick out, but there was something about the lot of us that meant mischief, and at last he struck. The next thing was to get the money, and where do you think he carried us but to that place with the door? Ooh, the dilapidated house? Whipped out a key, went in, and presently came back with a matter of £10 in gold and a check for the balance of counts. Oh, so he lives there. Maybe. Drawn payable to bearer and signed with a name that I can't mention, though it's one of the points of my story. But it was a name at least very well known and often printed. The figure was stiff, but the signature was good for more than that, if it was only genuine. I took the liberty of pointing out to my gentleman that the whole business looked apocryphal? Apocryphal. That's another word. And that a man does not, in real life, walk into a cellar door at 4 in the morning and come out with another man's check for close upon £100. Shit you right? But he was quite easy in sneering. Set your mind at rest, says he. I will stay with you till the banks open and the cash and check myself. So we all set off, the doctor and the child's father and our friend and myself, and passed the rest of the night in my chambers. And next day, when we had breakfasted, went in a body to the bank. I gave in the check myself and said I had every reason to believe it was forgery. Not a bit of it. The check was genuine. Tut tut, said Mr. Utterson. I see you feel as I do, said Mr. Ensfield. Yes, it's a bad story, for my man was a fellow that nobody could have anything to do with. A real damnable man, and the person that drew the check is the very pink of the proprieties, that's the word. Celebrated too, and what makes it worse, one of your fellows who do what they call good. Blackmail, I suppose. An honest man paying through the nose of some of the capers of his youth. Blackmail house is what I call the place with the door in consequence. Alright. Though even that, you know, is far from explaining all, he added, with the words fell into a vein of musing. From this, he was recalled by Mr. Utterson asking rather suddenly, and you don't know if the drawer of the check lives there? Drawer. The drawer of the check. Why can't you just say the man who wrote the check? A likely place, isn't it? Returned Mr. Ensfield. But I happen to have noticed his address. He lives in some square or other. And you never asked about the place with the door? Said Mr. Utterson. No, sir, I had a delicacy, was the reply. I feel very strongly about putting questions. It partakes too much of the style of the day of judgment. You start a question, and it's like starting a stone. You sit quietly on the top of the hill, and away the stone goes, starting others, and presently some bland old bird, the last you would have thought of, is knocked on the head in its own back garden, and the family have to change their name. No, sir, I make it a rule of mine. The more it looks like Queer Street, the less I ask. So I know by Queer Street they mean, weird. Oh, there's an asterisk. Imaginary street where people and the difficulties are supposed to reside. So I'm gonna challenge this. Ask your questions. Ask them. Find out what's going on. He'd rather just not ask and just going on about his merry way. We gonna ask these questions. A very good rule too, said the lawyer. But I have studied the place for myself, continued Mr. Ensfield. It seems scarcely a house. There is no other door, and nobody goes in or out of that but once in a great while, the gentleman of my adventure. There are 3 windows looking on the court of the first floor, none below. The windows are always shut, but they're clean. And then there is a chimney which is generally smoking, so somebody must live there, and yet it's not so sure. For the buildings are so packed together about the court that it's hard to say where one ends and another begins. The pair walked on again in while in silence, and then, "Enfield," said Mr. Utterson. "That's a good rule of yours." "Yes, I think it is," returned Enfield. "But for all that," continued the lawyer, "there's one point I want to ask. I want to ask the name of the man who walked over the child." "Well," said Mr. Enfield, "I can't see what harm it would do. It was a man by the name of Hyde." Said Mr. Utterson. "What sort of man is he to see?" "He is not easy to describe. There's something wrong about his appearance, something displeasing, something downright detestable. I never saw a man who I so disliked, and yet I scarce know why. He must be deformed somewhere. He gives a strong feeling of deformity, although I couldn't specify the point. He's an extraordinary-looking man, and yet I really can't name nothing out of the way. No, sir, I can make no hand of it. I can't describe him. And it's not want of memory, for I declare I can see him in this moment." Mr. Utterson again walked some way in silence, and obviously under a weight of consideration. "You are sure he used a key?" he inquired at last. "My dear sir," began Enfield, surprised out of himself. "Yes, I know," said Mr. Utterson. "I know it must seem strange. The fact is, if I do not ask you the name of the other party, it is because I know it already. You see, Richard, your tale has gone home. If you have been inexact in any point, you had better correct it." "Oh, all right. I think you might have warned me," returned the other with a touch of sullenness. "But I have been pedantically exact, as you call it. The fellow had a key, and what's more, he still has it. I saw him use it not a week ago." "Well, you might have mentioned that earlier." Mr. Utterson sighed deeply, but never said a word, and the young man presently resumed. "Here is another lesson to say nothing," said he. "I am ashamed of my long tongue. Let us make a bargain never to refer to this man again." "With all my heart," said the lawyer. "I shake hands on that, Richard." My camera stopped recording for some unknown reason, so I'm just going to repeat what I was saying. Friends, supposed friends, maybe they're not friends, maybe they're just companions that like to walk together. They walk by this house, and the dude is like, hey, so something weird happened about that house. I saw this thing, and it's really weird, and I want to tell you about it. And he's like, okay. So they're talking about it, and then the other guy is like, well, why didn't you ask this? It's like, well, I don't think we should ask a lot of questions. A lot of questions lead you to a bad situation. I agree, okay. And then it didn't seem like he really believed him, or if he did, that he was like, why are you telling me this? Like, what's the point of me knowing this? And then he starts asking him further questions to verify his story, which, didn't they just agree not to ask too many questions? And then at the end, he's like, oh, I'm sorry for saying too much, let's just not talk about this again. Yeah, let's not. Like, God, I hate that. Like, imagine walking with your friend and you want to tell them this story, and they're like getting uppity with you, like, why did you tell me this story? I don't believe you. I'm gonna ask you all these questions. And then you're like, oh, I'm sorry for rambling on about this thing. We don't have to talk about this anymore. And the friend's like, yeah, let's not. I'm gonna beat you up. You better listen to me. If I say something, it's important. It's anything your friend says, too, listen to him. So that was the first chapter of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and also the first chapter of Dracula. If you're interested in this, and want to see more like this, if you want me to read more stories, or if you want me to read more of these stories, maybe like do another video where it's chapter 2 of both of these things, let me know. You can give me a thumbs up, you can comment below, some sort of indication would be awesome. Yeah, let me know what you thought. So, well, happy Halloween, guys. Hope you liked it. Have a great day, and go nab some ghosts. See ya.